Mic check 1 2. Hello, what's up? What's going on? And welcome back to the Agostinho Zinga show. Rewind that. Welcome back to the Agostinho Zinga show, episode number 122, with me, your host, Agostinho. What's going on? What's really good? What's happening? What's crack-a-lacking? Hope you're doing well. Hope you're well hydrated, well rested, and all that malarkey, because I'm feeling good. And in case you guys are wondering why this dark night specimen that is I is whispering in the night, is because it is quite late in the night, roughly sometime in the night, roughly sometime after 7 p.m., which means that I have to whisper because, living in an abode that has other people that live within this proximity or within this little space next door, above, over, under, you have to, be, what's that word called? Considerate of your neighbors. So in an effort to be considerate and in an effort to be well behaved, we'll raise a glass of red vino, from the old supermarket known as Lidl. Have a little sip to kind of get us all nice in the mood, and we'll get started. So yeah, back again. Apologies for the previous episode. The audio was a bit sketchy and the video wasn't as great as this is probably going to be, because of course it's a new laptop and I had to go through the whole rigmarole of getting OBS, of getting the kind of the software that I use in order to kind of record these things, to get this all aligned, which is a bit more of a bugbear than what it should be. It's not really off the shelf. The program itself is off the shelf, but you have to do quite a lot of things in settings in order to kind of get it where you need to get it to. And luckily I was able to do that because, YouTube is amazing for that, isn't it? Wonder what we do without YouTube. Imagine, no YouTube, not able to, reconfigure a laptop, not able to fix the screen on a phone. I don't know, not able to figure out how to change a midsole on your shoe, right? Loads of weird little things that you find out how to do. You'd only find it out through YouTube. So yeah, God bless YouTube. And luckily I was able to find a video, which I've been able to do quite often now. I think most people are familiar with that, who watch or listen to this podcast will know. If you use the internet, you're familiar with whenever you try and search for whenever you try and look for answers on the internet, especially on YouTube, you tend to always go for the videos that are quite short in length, right? You don't go for the 20-minute ones. It depends though. If you're confused, or if you don't get it from the 10-minute one, then maybe the 20-minute or 30-minute video will be like your saving grace. Like, oh, thank God this person's gonna go through every single detail, right? But the nature of computers, the nature of operating systems in general, operating software, is that no two things are the same, right? They kind of might have some general similarities, but they're not all going to be the same. Some people are running really old software. Some people are recorded a video or uploaded the video they recorded quite a while ago. Everything is a bit different. So sometimes whenever you're looking for some self-help tutorial, right, in order to kind of fix your little electronic bugbears, you'll find a video that's 10 minutes, you won't get it, then you find one that's 20, hoping that it's going to give you much more detail, and it only ends up confusing you even more. Then you'll find one that's like 30 minutes long. You end up trying to watch that and trying to get it, and you don't get it. And then usually what happens is that you end up going back to the 10-minute video, reading through the comments, and then you figure out, you went wrong, right? Because there's bound to be some other person who's, screaming in all caps, "But it doesn't work, please help." You click reply button, you see the replies, you go through the list of replies, and you kind of figure out how to troubleshoot your computer. So even though YouTube gives you the answers in the form of a video, it still allows you to understand what happened, so you can then help somebody else. Because then whenever someone else brings up a topic or brings up the same sort of roadblock that they've been having with their computer, with their tablet, with their smartphone, with their piece of software, you can instantly kind of pipe up and go, "Oh yeah, I know how to fix that because that happened to me too." So YouTube is amazing for that, right? Because it doesn't not only just give you the answer, it also allows you to kind of figure it out yourself. Because obviously you're going to run into robots. It's not going to be as easy as it is going through the actual video itself. So luckily I was able to kind of run through OBS, get it all figured out, and now we are where we are now. Nice crisp audio, even though I'm whispering like 21 Savage on a new Metro Boomin tape, right? 13 got my first stripe. So good, that tape, so fucking good. Even though I'm whispering and it's dark, you can still see me a lot more clearer than the other for the previous video. So again, apologies for the earlier quality, but I'm all for getting stuff out as soon as possible and not waiting around for stuff to be perfect. I didn't have that much time in the morning because I had to go for a run, then went to the gym, then ran back, got changed, had breakfast, quickly did a video, uploaded it. Do you know what I mean? I was just like on autopilot. But today I had a bit more time when I came back home after work, so I was able to kind of get things done. But being precious about things can be a little bit gay. You can end up just wasting time and just doodling or twiddling your thumbs just in the hope that you're going to get things perfect. And nothing's perfect. Do you know what I mean? I'm recording this on webcam with a little shitty USB mic, and I'm kind of getting it done. That's the main takeaway from this message. Get shit done. Don't wait until it's perfect. Or maybe you should wait until it's perfect, and then you can have a better product. But you know what? Better products, better schmoduct. Who cares? But anyway, let's roll on deep and get into some topics we want to talk about because it's been too long. Number one, books. So it's getting towards the end of the year, and I've kind of recommended this a few times, but I'm reminded daily, right? No pun intended, just how great this book is. It's called The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. And it's 366 meditations on wisdom, perseverance, and the art of living. Essentially, each day there's a day, right, marked on there on each. So each page has a day in the year that you can kind of go to, corresponding day, and it has a Stoic philosophy-based quote. The quote of the philosophy of Stoicism exudes the idea that you should be able to withstand all the bullets, all the stones that get thrown at you in life, and kind of maintain a kind of even keel approach to most things, right? So you're never as good as they say, you're never as bad as they say, sort of idea of philosophy. So essentially, each day you're meant to read one piece of these, a little nugget of philosophy, based on a little nugget of Stoicism philosophy, right, or the philosophy of Stoicism, and then the paragraph or bit underneath the quote itself, taken from the various influential Stoic philosophers like Epictetus and Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, is a little abbreviation or an expounding of that quote from Ryan Holiday, who's kind of one of my favorite authors to date. Now he's got loads of books out there that you should kind of check out. The most recent that I'm just about finished reading now is called Conspiracy, which is a great book. So I've got it on audio book at the moment now. Conspiracy kind of details the whole Hulk Hogan vs. Gawker case that took place maybe I think a couple of years ago, where Hulk Hogan got a huge payout from Google because they decided to publish a secret sex tape that was made without his knowledge. And that kind of, is kind of the battle of, when Gork was around telling people secrets and in the name of free press, and Hulk Hogan being celebrated, he was arguing about the merits or the legality of having his private life remain private. So it's a really amazing book that kind of details that kind of real chasmaclysmic, however you pronounce that word, battle of kind of ideology for the most part. But it's very interesting, so I recommend you check out some of Ryan Holiday's books. But The Daily Stoic is flipping amazing, especially towards the end of the year when I've kind of done away with giving myself like set goals, right? I've been trying to kind of maintain a bit more of a balanced diet, maintain my fitness, and just be more of a practitioner than a dreamer, because that's something that used to kind of always affect me in the past. Sometimes just having dreams or having aspirations, it kind of always felt like you were doing things, right? Just because you had them in your head, you felt like you were achieving something, but you weren't really. So I've kind of did away with the whole goal setting list, because the fact that I was writing down goals gave me a false sense of achievement. It kind of made me feel like I was doing something I wasn't. So I thought, you know what, let me just start doing the things I already know I should be doing anyway. So, that was playing out more regularly, that was trying to write more regularly, that was trying to be more creative minded more regularly. Do you know what I mean? Like trying to have an output with my stuff, trying to, generate income that's outside of my job, in terms of selling stuff online or whatever it may be. The stuff that I'm meant to be, I know I should be doing, I was trying to do it more regularly in order to kind of, make myself, in order to kind of make the year more worthwhile. But sometimes towards the end of the year, even if you are somebody that's, quite headstrong as I am, you do start to reflect and think, did I waste a year? Did I not do the things I was meant to be doing? Was I kind of sleepwalking? Was I not going as hard as I should go? And Daily Stoic has been a really good and constant reminder, to kind of keep my eye on the prize, to trust the process, and just to kind of remain present and just know that, the bits and pieces that I've kind of got from this book, I've been trying to kind of meditate on them each day that I read them and trying to enact them or action them throughout the day, right? Trying to take something of it. Like, for instance, the quote for today, which I thought was very apt, was so the 16th was the 16th? No, not 16th, sorry. Go backwards. No, so for the quote for November 14th was, you choose the outcome. He was sent to prison. The quote says, he was sent to prison, but the observation he has suffered evil is an addition coming from you, Epictetus writes. This is a classic Stoic thinking. As you've gathered by now, an event itself is objective. How we describe it, that is what is unfair or is as a great calamity, or that they did it on purpose, is on us. Malcolm X, then Malcolm Little, went into prison as a criminal, but he left as an educated, religious and a motivated man who would help in the struggle for civil rights. Did he suffer an evil, or did he choose to make his experience a positive one? Acceptance isn't passive, it's the first step in an active process towards self-improvement. So I've kind of always kind of led by this mantra anyway, but it's always good to have it reminded to you on a daily basis, these sort of like little nuggets of philosophy that kind of can keep you grounded, and then let you understand, okay, cool, I can't choose what happens to me, but I can choose how I react to it. Again and again, I can't choose what happens to me, I can choose how I can react to it. I can't choose what happens to me, I can choose how I react to it. And then you just, it's a little thing you just keep in the back of your head, and it allows you to kind of be grounded. So again, it's coming to the end of the year, so I've got this bit left until it's finished this year, and I'm really glad I got it. An amazing book, a real eye opener. I got this at the beginning of the year as well, which is interesting, which is funny. I tried to buy it, and I've kind of read through it every single day since then. I've kind of taken it everywhere. It's really battered, as you can see, and yeah, I recommend you check it out. So the Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. As I said, I just finished reading Conspiracy. That's really really good book too. He's got Obstacles Away that I smashed through. That's amazing. Check that out too. But yeah, Ryan Holiday, very great author. I've also just about finished Fire and Fury inside the Trump White House by Michael Wolff. Michael Wolff is sort of like an esteemed political journalist for the most part. He's written books on the Clintons and a few other political figures, and he kind of wrote this kind of I wouldn't say tell-all, but he kind of wrote this expose on the Trump White House, interviewing various figures within the Trump campaign, before, during, and just before he left the White, or before his accreditation was sort of taken back or rescinded. He sort of detailed the whole chaos that's going on in there at the moment. And it's an interesting book because it's a good kind of pull back of the curtain into Trump's psyche. Someone who by and large has been derailed, or has been treated with scorn and contempt in the media. But it's interesting to kind of see it because I watch a lot of YouTube stuff, especially people like Stephen Colbert, those late night talk show guys, and they are relentless with the Trump hate, right? They hate the guy, right? And obviously, I'm sure if he was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, I'm sure I'd have different opinions of it, but being a bit detached from it, you're not that as emotionally invested. But you start to really wonder whether or not that kind of tactic of always kind of getting at him, taking the piss out of him on daytime TV, if it's kind of doing more damage than it's doing good. But then when you read this book, Fire and Fury, you realize that they're both complicit. They're both they're both willing participants in this like silly game that we call politics, right? More modern day politics. And if anything, Trump's done a lot of bad, right? He's done a lot of things wrong, but I think for the most part, he has kind of blown up the establishment, right? And kind of loosened it up a little bit. So even though America might have to suffer for the next 4 years or for the next 8 years with having this guy, be the leader of the free world, right? I think the political candidates to come after him will be much better for the experience that America's gone through with Trump, because you've seen exactly what it's like. Because there was that fear. I remember before Trump got elected, there was that common thing that you heard a lot of people say, especially when they do those kind of man in the street interviews with people, and they'll say like, oh, we need a businessman, right? We need a businessman to kind of like lead the country, right? You need an entrepreneur. You need someone that's going to kind of take the bull by the horns, that kind of saying, right? Get his hands dirty. I don't know, that kind of like, We don't need a kind of buttoned up political figure, right? In the conventional sense, we need someone a little bit more rags to riches, and Trump kind of came along and kind of fulfill that need, maybe in this most extreme version. But there's some really interesting parts in it, especially the bit about he kind of was a bit embarrassed. He kind of, Michael Wolff alludes to the idea that Trump might be embarrassed by his um rich kid status, right? He kind of wants to exude this idea that he is a kind of quintessential rags to riches story in the same vein as Alan Sugar or as Richard Branson, right? That, or as like a Jeff Bezos, right? You start from nothing and then you suddenly attain all this wealth through, through just like the sweat of your brow and just, pure will and determination. You kind of reach the pinnacle and become, president of the United States. And he kind of is a bit embarrassed that he's quintessentially is still a rich kid, He might be a very determined rich kid. He might be a very hard-working rich kid. He might be a rich kid who was able to kind of attain like a level of fame that most entrepreneurs aren't able to do. Someone's able to operate within the celebrity circles, but for the most part, he's quite embarrassed about that. And there's an interesting bit as well about about Trump's refusal to analyze data. How he kind of just takes, everything comes off the hip, and it reminds me a lot of Kanye West, right? That was something that was that kind of rubbed me up the wrong way. Even though I'm always going to be a Kanye fan, I'm never going to kind of jump off that train. It doesn't matter what he does, really. For the most part, I'm going to be a fan of his music and a fan of him personally. But I think that kind of rubbed me up the wrong way when he was kind of jumping on the whole like political train and wearing the MAGA hat and stuff. Was his refusal to read or to kind of gain any other knowledge on the subjects. He'd kind of always defer to his kind of group of friends who kind of, who had varying levels of knowledge on a certain subject. And then from those pieces of information, he then kind of decide what the best route to go down was. And it's a very populist way of thinking, right? Populism kind of, argues it's a politics of appealing to the everyday man, right? The everyday man doesn't want to hear political talk. They want to hear someone that's down to earth, that can talk that can come to their level, right? That can address the concerns of everyone, which is quite ridiculous, really, right? A politician being able to kind of serve the needs of an everyday man, especially a modern day politician who has to lobby for money, is just like insane. But imagine that's a populist way of thinking, where you don't want information, you don't want facts and figures, right? You want to just go from the hip and say, America isn't great. I want to return America back to the Cold War era, which is nuts. But there's a lot of that in here. His real refusal to kind of imbue data. And I like Michael Wolff's kind of assessment, where he kind of details everyone else's position within the kind of Trump organization or the Trump White House, where they each understand that his refusal to analyze data or to analyze information. So they try and get it to him in different ways. And it reminds me a lot of when kids, if a child doesn't like medicine, you wrap it up in a sweet, or you wrap it up in something else that they want to eat, right? So you kind of disguise it. Or when I used to tell my mom I hated onions, and then she just made, and the next dish she made for me was filled with onions, but it was just chopped up really finely, and I didn't notice it. So it reminds me a lot of that thing. But again, it reminds me a lot of the Kanye West ideal of thing, where you just kind of, you always go with your emotion. You always go with your feelings, right? Or what you feel in your gut. But the problem with someone like Trump is that even though he's grown up with a silver spoon, and did get a bit of a head start, he was given a quote unquote small loan of $1 million. He still has achieved quite a lot through just pure will and determination, right? And through just going with his gut, just going off pure instinct. Same with Kanye, right? Kanye's kind of proved all his naysayers and all these doubters wrong, and kind of reached the kind of pinnacle of creative expression in the varying different fields, when it comes from design, when it comes from arts, when it comes to music. He's done it all. So it's very difficult when people of that kind of stature have risen to those kind of heady heights, for educated intellectual people to be able to penetrate them. Because for the most part, the ones who are arguing against Trump's position are embittered, or in his view, right, are embittered because they're not in position, they're not there, or because their guy or their girl isn't in that seat. So Trump and Kanye will kind of look at people with a little bit of suspicion for the most part. Like, what are your real intentions? Like, why do you want me to listen to your information? Why should I read this book? And just in general too, when you've made it on your own terms for so long, right, and it's always worked out one way or the other, it's very difficult then for you then to sit down and think, you know what, for this next step I need to read. It just isn't. Our brains just don't work that way, right? I think for the most part, if you're fortunate enough to get loads of lucky breaks, I think the human brain um is so unrational that you'd kind of start to believe that it was you that was doing that you are the one responsible for the lucky breaks. You had somehow some divine ability to draw down luck on top of your head and kind of, and action it whenever you wanted it to. When really it was just, you were just fortunate. You just caught lucky break after lucky break after lucky break, 4 or 5 in a row. But then it doesn't mean the next decision that you make is going to be as fortunate. But again, loads of parallels between Kanye and Trump in this book, which kind of helps to understand why Kanye would be so infatuated by a man like Donald Trump. But I definitely recommend you check it out. Fire and Fury. It's a really good read, very enthralling read. It reads like if you've watched West Wing or if you watched Billions, that's currently on now. It kind of reads like one of those. It could easily be turned into like a drama on HBO or whatever it may be. It's really fast paced. You kind of get a snapshot of all the different people involved in the kind of, the Trump White House. And yeah, it paints a very clear picture of who Trump is, based on very different people's accounts and kind of the narrators, and personally on Michael Wolff's account too. So I recommend you check it out. I've just about finished this too. Those are 2 books I've currently on my reading list at the moment. And books, I'm listening to an audiobook. I've got quite a couple. I've just about finished Conspiracy by Around Holiday, which I mentioned earlier. I'm still going through the Leonardo da Vinci book by Walter Isaacson, but it's a bit of a dense read. It's essentially an autobiography, so it's kind of going chronologically, going through Leonardo's life for the most part. I'm kind of just up to, I think, just when I'm into his like 20s and stuff, so hopefully we should be speeding things up a little bit for the most part. And then I think the next book on my list I'm going to buy will be a book by Robert Greene called Laws of Nature. If you're familiar, if Robert Greene rings a bell, that is the author who wrote 48 Laws of Power, and he also wrote a follow-up to that book, which is kind of really popular in the hip-hop community, and he's also written a follow-up to that book called 50 Laws of Power with 50 Cent back in the day. A very, very important writer. 40 Laws of Power was one of those kind of seminal books that kind of was able to kind of, touch people all across all socioeconomical levels. It was probably I think at the time when it came out, 48 Laws of Power was probably one of the most popular books in prisons too, which was nuts to think about. But he's got a new book out called Laws of Nature, which essentially this kind of expounds on the idea of being what's that word called? I think he mentioned in an interview with Ryan Holiday today about being about how to operate in a social environment, right? So the idea, there's a law in 48 Laws of Power where you shouldn't outshine your master. If you've got like a tyrannical boss, like always make it seem as if your idea is his idea, it's his or hers idea. So that kind of idea of how to maneuver in tricky situations, like kind of, the idea that the world is full of, weirdos, and you need to kind of know how to operate within that world as opposed to trying to rid the world of weirdos. That's not going to happen. So Laws of Nature by Robert Greene is currently at the moment. It's a bit of a thicky. It's quite a big book, but I can't wait to kind of get through that and read that towards the end of the year and kind of wrap things up a bit. So yeah, that's the main thing. And also I've stopped. I think at the end of the year I might do a wrap up, a review, or like a conclusion, a little kind of overview of what I've read this year. But I've kind of stopped posting pictures of the stuff I read, especially on my main Instagram feed. I might post a couple pages here or there or a book cover on my stories, but I've stopped posting actual books I'm reading, like the amount on my Instagram feed, because I don't know, it just, it's always that kind of pat on the back stuff. You always feel like you're showing off for the sake of it, or you're not really being genuine. You're doing it kind of like for clicks and views, or I don't know, it just kind of comes a bit disingenuous. So I've kind of tried to keep that stuff private. I'll keep that stuff just to myself, not even private, just as it's a hobby that I kind of have found very interesting, very illuminating. It's allowed me to kind of, expand or to kind of explore different ideas that I've been thinking about, especially when they're, written up by very knowledgeable people who've done the research, who've put in the hard work and decided to put books together. So, it's a good way for me to kind of cheat and to kind of gain more knowledge on something I've already been thinking because someone else has done the hard work for me. So sometimes sharing it can come across a bit disingenuous, so I stopped doing that. But I might do a little review, a little roundup of the books that I've read this year. Probably do a podcast on that too, and maybe upload some of the pictures online as well. I'm interested to see what I've read. I've kind of tried to do about, was it 40? I think it's between like 35 to 46 books a year, maybe trying to read, which is quite good. I've been doing it for the last 3 years now, I think, essentially. I think I started off with about 25 books in a year. I'm not sure how many that is a month roughly, but I've been trying to do 4 books a month. Which is quite difficult, which means you have to essentially get through 1 book a week, which even though, which has been hard this year because for the most part, my max commute time has been like half an hour, if that, but I'm only spending 15 minutes of that or 22 minutes of that on a train. So it's not that much time to kind of actually read. I used to kind of get through a lot more books when I used to work in Shepherd's Bush in White City. Because from Stratford to Shepherd's Bush, that's like a solid hour of like sitting down or like standing up, whatever it may be. But that's actual hour of reading time. So you could bang that out, and that doesn't include the time that I'm reading outside of work, which means on the weekends, during a lunch break, I don't know, whatever, when you're taking a shit, like that doesn't include that time. So that kind of really helps to kind of speed through books. But when you've only got 22 minutes sitting on a seat on the way to go to work, you really have to carve out the time in order to kind of read a book. But as always, when I was reading or smashing through a book a week, it did again reaffirm the idea that if you really want something, or if you really enjoy doing something, you'll find the time to do it regardless of what obstacles in your way. And I always find the time to finish books, like just to kind of smash through them, especially the ones I enjoyed reading. If I didn't like reading it, or it kind of bored me to death, I just stopped reading it halfway through, because I thought that was another thing that I picked up on with a lesson learned from some other experienced readers. Said, you don't need to stick with the book just because you want to feel like you completed it. If it's not vibing with you, if it doesn't, or if just from some books you read, it's just repeating the same point again and again and again in different kind of under different themes, you can kind of dump the book. But having that hour did make you realize, you can, if you put your mind to it. It's really hard, really difficult, but you can essentially do it. Anyway, I've got a bunch of things I want to talk about on my list of topics. Let me just smash through some of these things now. That's enough of a life update. What have I got on here? Number 1, the end of Sober October, which is funny to talk about now since I'm drinking a glass of red wine. But yeah, Sober October's finished a while back, so a couple of weeks ago. I think I might mention it in the last podcast, but a quick roundup of that. I had to end it a little bit sooner than I wanted to because I was leaving my old workplace to start a new place, and I had a leaving drinks, and I didn't want to be that weird dude in my leaving drinks that doesn't drink. So I kind of had to just, cut it off before the scheduled date, which was, a little bit annoying, and I probably shouldn't have done in retrospect. But overall, the whole, I found Sober October quite easy to kind of get through, to be completely honest. It's also kind of reaffirmed to me that I don't have really an issue with alcohol. I don't really have an issue with alcohol abuse for the most part because I'm not dependent on it. My only problem is that, now, luckily, I think with the ability I've had, I've been fortunate enough to kind of travel around Europe for the most part. Barcelona for Primavera Sound, a couple times in Berlin. Actually, I've been to Berlin 3 times this year, which is nuts to think about. Then went to Madrid for a couple of times with the brunette. So those have been great, right? To go to European cities that I've heard that are quite well known for their drinking culture, and to kind of be reminded that you can enjoy alcohol, right? Because I think in the UK, unfortunately, which is a tired argument to kind of go back again and again, we don't really enjoy alcohol. We enjoy getting fucked up. We don't enjoy alcohol. We don't enjoy socializing, hanging out with friends. We enjoy socializing with friends and getting absolutely trolleyed, right? You hear that a lot said in workplaces, right? You're gonna go get pissed, right? Are you gonna go get effed up, right? It's a thing that people always say when they kind of going out. It's a kind of trope. It's a kind of, a chant, a kind of like, go on, mate, go on, do this, do that. You know what I mean? Like, go hard, go hard, go hard, go home. And you don't necessarily enjoy the actual alcohol itself, even though we have so many great bars, so many great restaurants that that we could be enjoying, but we don't necessarily enjoy it. So luckily, because I've been going away this whole year for the most part for little trips here and there, it's kind of reminded me how much I do enjoy alcohol, because I'm I would describe myself as a bit of a social butterfly. I like to hang out, especially at night. I'm just the general vibe of being outside, or being in a dimly lit bar, or being in a nightclub, or being in an amazing restaurant and having a drink with a couple of friends and talking and catching up and shit, or meeting new people. I love all that stuff, right? But and I also am very aware of how easy those interactions are made when someone's drinking. It doesn't need to be both of you. One person could be sober, but one person is loose, and they're kind of getting themselves comfortable in the environment. That could easily then what's that word called? That could easily then you know it could easily then kind of get you could feel it too. The recipient can also feel that relaxedness for that person, and then it kind of makes for a much better conversation, makes for a much better experience. Just especially when you're both deciding that you're just gonna have a good time. If you've ever watched Chef's Night Out, which I watched recently now, with this amazing restaurant called Viviante in France, in Paris actually, that's actually, which the chef is the son of Jean Tuto or Tutti. I forgot how you pronounce his surname, but the founder of APC, his son is a chef and a restaurateur, and he owns this restaurant called Vivant in Paris, and he did a chef's night out, which I checked out on Munchies on YouTube. So I recommend you check that out. I'll link it in the show notes if I can find it. And you get, that's what you picture when you go out with your mates, right? It's just like a fun time, right? Just having drinks, having food, shooting the shit, hanging out, just having fun. But we don't necessarily have that. So I think Sober October told, if anything, which is weird, counterintuitive, it has kind of reminded me of just how much I enjoy the social aspect of alcohol, but I don't necessarily enjoy the getting fucked up or the drunkenness of it. I mentioned a few times before, when I was DJing and I was being sober, it was quite difficult the first couple of weeks, or especially the first weekend, where I had a few Fridays and Saturdays I was doing, because I usually do the Friday at Tap East, and then sometimes I might do a Saturday at Heathcote and Star. But I had a couple Saturdays back-to-back weekends, so I was working based effectively 6 days in a week, right? So it's quite difficult to just to feel alive, or to feel like a functioning human being when you're always kind of hungover. You've always got that kind of alcohol fog over your head. And if everyone knows, if you do actually party for real and you go out for real, how annoying that kind of feeling is, because you can never quite shake it, right? It takes a lot longer than you hope it would take, regardless if you drink alcohol, regardless if you take your magnesium tablets, all those things. Hangover's a hangover, you can never escape it. So if anything, I don't miss the hangovers, I don't miss that. It was just the missing of the social side of it. But there was also an acceptance that maybe I needed to kind of change my habits, right, and limit my drinking during the week, which I've been quite good at doing these last couple of weeks, apart from today being an exception. But not having a copious amounts of drinks in the house, right? Because I used to buy boxes of fucking beer all the time. So that's been very helpful. And it's allowed me to sleep a lot more, right? Of course, because you're not hungover, you can just sleep 6 or 7 hours. And yeah, I thought in general, I just thought it was a much easier proposition than maybe last year might have been. I think I've kind of grown up a little bit more than I had done last year, so I'm kind of a bit more mature when it comes to going out and having a good time, like especially this year as opposed to last year. Whenever I DJ'd afterwards, I'd have to go out and get fucked up. Right now, I might DJ on a Friday and just go home. I might meet a friend, I might go to another nightclub, but it's not necessarily always about the next thing. I can just hang out and just chill, which is something, again, that's come with maturity, has come with maybe, again, that last trip to Berlin was a real eye-opener, because it did make me realize again that I don't necessarily need to be in Berlin to have the fun. The fun is wherever I am, right? The fun is anywhere that I'm present, anywhere that I'm willing to kind of go out and enjoy is where the fun's going to be. I don't necessarily need to be in Berlin. And I think that maturity is what kind of led to the whole change in attitude. So yeah, Sober October was a pretty good experience for me. I'd probably do it every year, regardless if Joe Rogan and those guys don't do it anymore. It's something that I think is really essential in the year to kind of just reset the clock. So similar to the fasting, similar to the intermittent fasting of 16 hours a day, right? Especially during the week, Monday to Friday when I'm at work, it's a lot easier to do than it is on the weekends. But just the idea of eliminating certain things or restricting yourself in to some extent, and then allowing yourself to kind of have a bit of fun, reward yourself during the weekend, just to kind of leave that door a bit open on the weekend. You don't need to reward yourself, don't need to be an adult child, right, and give yourself a treat, but just giving yourself room to kind of be a little bit more relaxed and to kind of go with the flow during the weekends is something that is important too. But I had a great Sober October experience, and I can't wait to do it again. Next on the list, John Mayer and Jerry Lorenzo quit drinking. Well, good kind of segue, or good not segue, but add on to the topic I was talking at hand. It's a cool little interview with Jerry Lorenzo and John Mayer. Jerry Lorenzo is gearing up to release these Nike collaboration, which I've kind of spoke about in a few other videos. I think on YouTube and on a couple other podcasts I mentioned. The trainer itself is probably not something that's my taste completely. Now seeing a few more images of it, I probably would wear it, but for what it is, it's really, really nice trainer, man. Because I always try to think, whenever these shoes come out, especially from these kind of new age dudes, the kind of like the new, let's say Hiroshi Fujiwara is my icon, right? Is my like streetwear godfather, my streetwear kind of like idol, right? I'd imagine if you're a kid now and you're 18, 19, your idols are Heron, Preston, Virgil Abloh, Jerry Lorenzo, the cactus flea plant flower marquee girl. Like, there's a few people, right, who you look up to, right? Maybe Samuel Ross from A Cold War, people that you like, that you kind of look up to as your idol. So it must be amazing when all these people that you look up to, who you think are awesome, are all releasing amazing shoes, right? They're all pointing out great stuff, like Matthew Williams at Leaks. It must be so cool to see that. So I kind of, whenever I see these shoes, even though they might not all be my cup of tea, I try to detach myself away from it for a little bit and step back and think, if I was 16, if I was 18 right now, and I went on Hypebeast and I saw Jerry Lorenzo's Fear of God and have done a Nike collaboration, right, a full capsule collection with a shoe and clothing, I'll be like, what the fuck? Even though they're Nike, I kind of throw out collaborations. Everyone, right? Yoon for Ambush is getting a collaboration. Everyone's kind of getting a shoe. Now, just Sylvester got a Jordan, which was, a bit weird, but hey, everyone's getting a shoe, but still, like, regardless if everyone gets a shoe, what are you going to do with it? And Jerry Lorenzo does a really good job of that whole collection, really has a good way of kind of imbuing his kind of DNA and his brand philosophy into a brand. I think in the video I'm going to play just now, he mentions in the beginning that, the shoe itself, the reason why it looks so good, looks the way it does, because he kind of brought his last from Italy with him to Oregon to kind of for R&D and to kind of so they can build on top of, which kind of makes a lot of sense, because if you've seen any of Nike's recent efforts, especially some of their retros from before, they've all got that really annoying banana kind of toe box thing where they kind of always point up. And Jerry Lorenzo shoes, which I kind of like, and just in terms of silhouette, I really, really enjoy how flat the front of it is, and the kind of sharpness that he gets on his toes, I think is always really underrated. Something, again, I think only a nerd of shoes would kind of pick up on, but I've always appreciative of it, and it makes complete sense why this Nike shoe looks the way it does, because he, brought his last from Italy with him to Oregon, I'm assuming, where they were developing the shoe. But the conversation kind of evolves, and it kind of speak about my, again, the whole drinking thing that I was mentioning earlier. And John Mayer and Jerry Lorenzo are both now sober. Again, I don't necessarily think I'll need to become sober in that respect. I don't necessarily think I have that kind of problem, because luckily, again, I think it's only because I work a full-time job. I think if I was a full-time creative and you have a chance and you were getting, invited to as many fucking branded events as they do, plus the performances or appearances that they do in whatever place, and the free time on your hands, I probably would have to be sober. But I guess when you have a 9 to 5 and you've got 8 days blocked out for you to be at work and to be kind of sober, to be dry, it's hard to kind of develop a bit of an addiction in that respect. I'd assume, again, maybe there's people out there that have addictions that do 9 to 5, but I don't know how you'd be able to balance it. Going 8 hours without a hit or whatever you're on must be brutal. But this kind of like little part of the interview I thought was really interesting. Let me quickly switch this audio setting. Hopefully this works. But yeah, I thought this was a very interesting part of the interview. I'm going to load it up on the screen now. Hopefully it should play. Here's a video. Show it. Boom.
Quit 2 years Tuesday for me, man.
Oh, for real?
Both you guys
crazy,
quit drinking. How did
I'm 3 years in November.
Good for you.
how is that?
That's crazy.
2 in next Tuesday.
What effect has that had on both you guys? You both quit,
Yeah.
professionally and personally.
I mean, my family life's better, my work life's better. I'm able to focus, but I don't condemn it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. You know, I just think that some people can handle it and some people can't.
It's the most personal thing to people. It is, and I know it's one of the most personal things to people because try talking to someone else about drinking. Try talking to someone else about how you haven't had a drink for 2 years and watch what happens to them.
Instant
Well,
judgment.
I don't drink that much anyway. I don't. And if I were to tell other people how they could do it, it just is so particular to your own spirit and your own psychology that it's almost impossible to develop one way of explaining it to someone else. You have to fight really hard to look at it from a critical point of view because it's constantly pushed on you. Every Friday and Saturday on social media, there is enabling going on for drinking. When your friend blacks out, if he dies, he dies. And me saying I won't have another drink 10 minutes later.
Captions, yeah.
What if I woke up every morning on Friday and Saturday and Sunday and put my feet on the ground and I just went, not hungover, and put it on social media every day, you know? Like, that would be an influence to people because I think you forget that's an option. And if you look at drinking the way you would look at anything else, which is risk, reward, what am I giving up, what am I getting? It's some of the worst odds that ever existed.
Yeah,
and I just looked at it like, I had one night where
Especially
I went
when you get
deep.
older.
Yeah, man, I just went deep one night. I remember being like, hey, what happens if I keep going? And it wasn't like dark, it wasn't sinister. I went, I always stop here. What if I keep going? It was really kind of like a oddly like playful kind of a thing. And then I went, oh, I'm done.
Did you go though? Did you keep going?
Listen, I have the most amazing last night of my life drinking story. And it was Drake's 30th birthday party, and I made quite a fool of myself.
Really?
Oh, and it took me weeks to stop doing this every morning I woke up. And then I had a conversation with myself. And I remember where I was. It was like 6 days into the hangover. I was in my 6th day of the hangover. That's how big the hangover was. I looked out the window and I went, okay, John, what percentage of your potential would you like to have? Because if you say you'd like 60 and you'd like to spend the other 40% having fun, that's fine. But what percentage of what is available to you would you like to make happen? And there's no wrong answer. What is it? And I went, 100.
I want it all.
I said 100.
I want it all.
And then the voice in my head said, okay, do you know what that means? And I went, we don't have to talk anymore. I get it.
Let's go.
And that next year, I did 4 tours. I was
Wow.
in 2 bands.
Yep.
I was happy on airplanes. So what happens when you stop drinking? The level goes, it feels like boredom at first, but if you stick with it, the line straightens out and it goes kind of low, right? You're like, oh, I'm not having these high highs. But if you work, you can bring the whole line up.
Wow.
Which I totally agree with, right? So again, this only needs to be said for, like, you know, people in the Western world who are unable to kind of handle their drink or have very bad association with drinking, and drinking is always kind of a way to kind of you to get fucked up and for you to kind of forget your troubles, right? To kind of wash away your pain in some respects, right? You're not necessarily drinking to enjoy what you're drinking, so you can kind of, you know, put reality on pause, right? Temporarily until the next week. But it does need to be said, you know, for as great as it is, you know, it does waste a lot of time. Even though, you know, I'm fortunate enough to have a 9 to 5, so I'm not able to kind of, you know, really lose myself to any sort of, like, you know, substance abuse for the most part, I think. And plus, you know, I started drinking fairly late in life because I spent most of my early, you know, teenage years and kind of, early 20s in church, which kind of, allowed me to kind of forsake some of those pitfalls that people go through. But I think in general, it does take up a lot of time. It really does. And when you're trying to do stuff, when you're trying to hustle, when you're trying to get out there and, make something of yourself and trying to fulfill your potential, trying to realize your dreams, the last thing you need, the only thing that the thing that's non-renewable, the thing that you can't top up, the thing that you can't go and get more of or ask for a loan of is time. Like, you just can't get that back, and it's just so valuable and it's so fleeting, right? You can waste minutes, hours, perusing social media platforms, right? Watching erroneous videos on YouTube, in the same way that you can just waste hours and hours, finding a place to go and drink, then sitting down and drinking, then going through the process and getting yourself all the way up until you get drunk, going home. The time it takes for you to kind of get to sleep, waking up hungover, and not being at your full capabilities. It just takes up too much time. And when you need to actualize your dreams and you have a 9 to 5 that's already taken away 35 to 45 hours every week, you need to really, really be mindful of how you spend your time and what you do with it and the things that you're doing. And fortunately, I think for the most part, when you go hard, I think for me, as I did beforehand during the party phase, you realize quite quickly that you need to kind of, personality as well. I'm always a bit of an all-in kind of guy. You need to realize how you'll be able to temper it. And for me, the easy way to temper it is just not to really go hard during the week. Monday to Friday, not go hard, and then weekend, do whatever you want to do. And usually, like with cheat meals, when you diet, even though you say you're going to have one cheat meal in a week, sometimes if you're really strict and you do things well, you probably just forget to have the cheat meal. You just continue eating healthy. And that's the same way with drinking. The more you sort of kind of give yourself a bit more of a structure and a regiment around it, the more you start to realize how, the more you'll, I think, curtail the kind of, tendencies to kind of go hard in the paint. But that interview was very, very illuminating, super informative, so super nice to see two of these guys, and at different levels in their kind of creative timeline, talking about something they were able to do that they were able to allow them to kind of actualize their potential even more. And I really recommend watching the interview, because Jerry Lorenzo talks about the pain and the struggle he had to go through, surrounding himself to making sure that this thing went well. Because I think he mentioned Virgil Abloh mentioned the Nike collaboration too. I think Jerry Lorenzo mentioned it, how he kind of had a bit of a breakdown during the actual shoot of the sixth collection and debuting the Nike shoe, and trying and getting nervous about putting it out there in the first place. I think Virgil mentioned it too, fleetingly, like the pressure of the Nike deal, right? Because they're all these new icons in fashion who are kind of now become the new establishment. And for the most part, these kind of brands such as Nike, when they do end up collaborating with you, and you're a guy that was kind of trying to make it, sending a million prospective job offers or pitching ideas to big brands and being ignored and always being a bit on the periphery. When Nike finally call you up and say they want a collab, it's sort of like the ultimate vouch, sort of the ultimate stamp of approval, and all the kind of insecurities that you've had, that you kind of buried deep down in your psyche, will come rising back up the top again, because you realize just how exposed you're going to be with this collaboration, right? It's going to kind of elevate you, or elevate your brand, or kind of get you more exposure, but it's also going to expose the bits and pieces of you that aren't really fleshed out yet. You're thinking that in your head. So I remember Virgil mentioning once, before the Nike 10 collaboration came out, how nervous he was. Not nervous, but he was basically mentioning something along the lines of, if he got this wrong, the Nike 10 collection, he'd be dead. Like, that'd be it. He'd be cancelled from the culture, because already, there's already a bit of the hype beast commenters don't really like Virgil anyway. They think he's a bit of a charlatan, and he's aware of the kind of, sentiment online, and, all the trolls and the comments and stuff. So imagine if he gets the Nike collaboration wrong, the trolls are going to come out and hate him. The people that are on the fence that don't like him because of he's a new kind of establishment are going to come out with their knife sharpened. And the same sort of happened, I'm assuming, with Jerry Lorenzo, because he mentioned he had a bit of a breakdown, or just maybe just kind of trying to do really good work. It just takes so much more out of you that you just can't really, allow yourself to get too enamored with the whole alcohol thing. You kind of need to you need to sacrifice something. In order to kind of gain another thing. It's just one of those things you have to do in life. And And I don't think there's any situation, regardless of what you're doing, that will not require some level of sacrifice. It just has to happen, especially if you want to reach a next level. I think if you want to make parallel movements in life, right, you don't really want to go up or down. You just want to make parallel movements, sidestep, then I think you can, for the most part, life is quite forgiving. You can get away with just continuing as normal. But if you have any sort of aspiration, if you look, especially for me, in my even in my arrogance, when I have an inflated sense of self, but it's less to do with what I think. It's less to do with how good I think I am, and more to do with, if they can do it, why can't I? It's more of that, right? It's like they're humans just like I am. They have ideas just like I do. They have a similar sort of, like, I don't know, creative background as I do, right? In terms of the things that we've kind of did back in the day, and something here, blah, blah, blah. We have a similar kind of story arc, right? Why can't I complete that end bit? It's just, that's what it is. It's more so what other people do, I see that I could do as well, or something, or it's in a field that I'm interested in exploring. They happen to be in it. They're doing work, and I don't think it's way out of my league. Then I want to do it too. But in order to do that, you have to also analyze their journey properly and see what sacrifice did they make. And a sacrifice they made was something like this. You listen to John Mayer and Jay Lorenzo talk about forsaking alcohol in order to, tap into the nether regions of their creativity. That means that they're missing out on quite a lot of things, right? That means that they're maybe not going to as many red carpet events. They're maybe not, maybe they're missing out on a couple of deals because some deals are only done in restaurants and bars. Maybe you're missing out on certain fashion industry events and stuff, like you're based mainly in LA if you're Joe Lorenzo, because you don't, necessarily want to smooch around with the kind of flash and glitterati in Paris and stuff. So there's things that you're kind of forsaking in order to kind of, further your career, or to kind of solidify your position in the industry, or to kind of create history, to kind of, bend space and time to your will. Like, you're doing things, or you're sacrificing things for a goal that not everyone is going to acknowledge or even achieve. And again, like I said, I just don't think there's any area in life that doesn't require that. It all requires a sacrifice of some sort. You just have to decide which sacrifice it is, if you're willing to give it up or not. And if you don't, then you then can't complain, or you then can't point fingers at others who have paid the ultimate price, right? Who've kind of forsaken family and friends or to kind of achieve their dreams. That's where probably the lack of understanding, or some people have they struggle to understand the kind of hater mentality, because for the most part, haters do tend to snipe at people who are high achievers, who are kind of going for it, right? It's never really people who kind of are charlatans, or people that shouldn't really be where they shouldn't really be there, because for the most part, we have a quite good mechanism for, getting rid of people who shouldn't be where they should be, who shouldn't be there, right? Who are like, cheating the system for the most part. I think we're quite self-correcting as human beings, right? We can realize quite quickly, okay, this person's, faking the funk. But I think for the most part, haters tend to go for people who are actually doing things, right? Sometimes it might not be something you agree with, it might not be something that you necessarily do, but we can't be the moral success police, right? We can't be doing the policing people saying, oh, you're not doing it the way I would do it, so I don't like you anymore. That's not what we should do, which probably explains why people don't understand the haters, because it's like, you're acknowledging that they're doing something, right? This is why you're hating them, but then you're also hating them because they're doing it for just because they're doing it. The sheer arrogance of doing it. It's a very weird way of thinking, but again, I think that might come from resentment because you don't do your thing, and then because you're finding it so hard, you're like, oh, how are you finding it so easy when they're not finding it easy? They're struggling as much as you are. Very, very weird communication going on around there. But yeah, like I mentioned, I recommend you check it out. Really cool. I think Jay Lorenzo's shoe's coming out very soon too, so you should check that out too. And yeah, overall an amazing interview. What else next on the list? Luka Sabbat running off on the plug. Oh, this is fucking hilarious. So Luka Sabbat, a well-known influencer and model and designer, and I would say, what's the thing that he has? And agency founder, right, with Hot Mess or Collective that he runs with his friend Noah. So he's kind of, we're very well plugged into the scene at the moment. He's doing his thing and moving and shaking. but he was caught in a bit of hot water again. No, well, he's caught in a bit, not again, but he was caught in a bit of hot water recently with this news that he supposedly didn't fulfill his end of the agreement when it came to being paid for his services and his influencer by Snapchat. Again, I'm not interested in the particulars of him personally as a person. I'm not necessarily one to talk about people's business. I just think it's interesting to talk about people who are in the kind of, limelight, and to kind of glean lessons that can be applied to our, us regular civilians, or us, common folk. Because I think for the most part, celebrities and people of some sort of notoriety are magnifying glasses for us as a society overall, and lessons can be learned from their kind of missteps that we can kind of apply in our own lives. So let me get this story up on here and read the actual details so I don't kind of ad-lib the wrong info. So Luka Sabbat sued for not wearing snap spectacles. Where's the other article? I think that was one that had maybe a bit more information on it. Which one's that one? I think that might be this, right? The Blast. Cool. Let's check this out and see if this is correct what I was saying. These websites are all horrible though, right? They got a picture of Luka and Kourtney Kardashian. I'm assuming because maybe they're dating, right? But it's got nothing to do with the actual article itself. Just like clickbait shit. It's like annoying. Yeah. Okay. So, it says here. What's the article say? So, yeah, again, see, it starts off with Kourtney and she's got nothing to do with the story, right? It's just like, again, just these websites are just the fucking worst, man. Imagine going to journalism school and having to write this or having to put this together as a piece. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, anyway, whatever. PR firm consulting filed a lawsuit against model Luka Sabbat, obtained by The Blast, claiming that they signed him to an influencer agreement and paid about $45,000 to post on social media during Milan and Paris Fashion Week. The PR consulting says they approached Sabbat in September, which is courtesy, again, talking about Kardashians again twice. How do you mention the Kardashians twice in an article about some guy not fulfilling his end of a Snapchat? It's like, Jesus Christ. They agreed to pay him a total of $60,000 with an upfront payment of $45,000 for photograph in public with wearing the glasses. Sabbat was contracted to do one regular post and 3 stories on his own Instagram account, but only completed 1 post and 1 story. He was also required to turn over analytics for the campaign and allegedly did not. Sabbat, who has 1.7 million followers on Instagram and only 370 on Twitter, did not give back the $45,000 that he was given, so the company wants $90,000 plus attorney fees to make it right. Interesting, Sabbat is not the only. Anyway, so interesting, right? I think the interesting part of it is just how much money some of these guys are being able to generate, right? Which is amazing, which kind of goes back and which kind of lends itself weight back to Gary V's kind of assertion, right? That attention is key, right? Just being able to get eyes on what you're doing or eyes on you, or specifically, especially if you're a personal brand, it's a key to everything, especially if you're an influencer, right? Being able to garner attention, the right kind of attention for the most part, is really the key to becoming successful, because that attention is essentially its own currency, right? You can then you can slap whatever price tag you want on it, and if a brand wants to be associated with you, they pay that price. You know what I mean? And then they can garner that, and they can hopefully garner that same attention. And being somebody like a Luka Sabbat, who kind of for the most part does, if you check his Instagram feed, I went through some of it, he's quite good at picking and he's quite good at choosing which brand to align himself with, and it be done in a tasteful way, right? He's very good at kind of, sometimes if you don't know that he's an influencer and you just went through his page, you wouldn't be able to spot, especially if you didn't click the captions, you wouldn't be able to spot which piece was a branded piece of content, especially if it's not like an outside of an editorial. He does really want to kind of picking and choosing the right things, because that, again, something I kind of have learned a lesson from the old school Japanese heads, right? Especially someone like Hiroshi Fujiwara, who, when often asked about collaboration, would always say that he only works with companies or brands that he likes, right? If he doesn't like something, this is during a time when Hiroshi Fujiwara's Fragment Thunderbolt was like that was like instant money in the bank. He would like not want to cheapen his product just because of a quick check, right? He'd only align himself with things that he supported or he liked, and if he didn't like it, then he wouldn't do it. Simple as that. And I think there's something to be learned from that, and there's some influencers that don't do that, who just kind of whore themselves out, for lack of a better term, right? Don't necessarily take any don't necessarily take into consideration the long-term damage that being associated with something shit you could do to your brand in the long run, right? Sort of diluting your brand, for lack of a better term. And he does quite a good job of doing it so far. But again, the money is nuts, right? What they get paid. So 60 grand and then 45 in upfront, the rest when he fulfills his end of the bargain, which wasn't that much work, right? Considering how often he's photographed in fashion weeks, gets flown out by Dolce Gabbana and all these other people. So like, I'm sure it wasn't something that he would require that much work. But I think if we're going back to the Gary Vaynerchuk thing, I think in general, if we are believing that the apocalypse is going to come soon, and reign bloody Mary on influencer marketing for the most part, and it won't be as easy for brands to get influencers. It won't be as easy for influencers to get brands to kind of give them silly amounts of money in order to kind of get people to click and buy the things that they want to sell. I think that end is coming very, very soon. I don't think companies are going to be able. I think Snapchat is already, they're blowing money anyway, blowing money real fast. They're burning through a hell of a lot of cash. There's rumors out there in tech world that they're going to go under very soon. So for them to essentially blow 90 grand or 60 or 90 grand, maybe because of 100 grand, considering, regarding how long this court case goes on, they may be able to blow that much money on the kid who didn't necessarily take the deal serious, or who kind of got a bit of cold feet and kind of decided to kind of, change his mind mid-campaign. Says a lot about that business model overall, and says, if Luka Sabbat is doing that, what is XYZ person doing? And again, I just think in general, for people coming up and trying to do their thing and trying to move around and be an influencer and get their paper up too, I think this should be a lesson learned too, in order to kind of, be professional about your job, man. I don't think, again, it's quite funny that he ran off on a plug, right? I think that I wrote down my notes. I guess maybe to his friends and to that circular group of people, it's quite hilarious, you kind of, maybe it's a kind of weird way of sticking it to the man, or some way, or some, I don't know how they kind of interpret it, but I think, it does show a bit of lack of professionalism. I think if you're coming up, I think one thing that you can do, especially if you're a nobody or you're trying to make a name for yourself, is just be professional, right? It's to be on time, it's to be courteous, it's to kind of, try and do your best work in order to kind of give yourself a bit more of give yourself a better reputation. You hear a lot of people, or you hear someone say, I don't know who said it, but whenever you think of an old Hollywood actor that you haven't seen in a while, actor and actress, or a director that you haven't seen a new movie of, right? I remember someone saying along the lines of, who works in the entertainment business, whenever you think, where have XYZ person been, it's usually not voluntarily. They're usually not voluntarily out of the business. It's usually the business has kind of pushed them out because they're dicks, because they don't necessarily get along well with people, because they're not necessarily good to work with, right? So the business has a good way of kind of like, passing that information on. It's a small world, not many people, for the people that are performing in front of camera, imagine how small it must be, a small group of people that operate behind the camera and keeping that kind of ecosystem functioning. So the same thing could be said for the marketing world. The same thing could be said for the influencer marketing world, especially when you get into the niche kind of influencer marketing world within the fashion community. Right, it's very, very small. So if you kind of, if you're being this unprofessional, you're burning these kind of bridges with Snap. Imagine what you're doing with a magazine. Imagine what you're doing with random blog. Imagine what you're doing with random retailer in this city, right? So those kind of things, doing them again and again, you create a bit of a reputation. People start spreading news about you that you're not necessarily, I won't say trustworthy, but you're not necessarily someone people can count on. You might run off on a plug, wink, wink. It's not necessarily a good thing or something that you want to do. It's funny for the, for your friends and for the group chat, but overall, in terms of your professional, in terms of your career, quote unquote career prospects, or just in terms of just your money as well, you're going to hurt your money overall in the long run. But again, I think we're seeing the end, especially the end. I think we'll look back on it and see, like, this guy got paid nearly $60,000. Well, he would have got paid $60,000 to post essentially like three bits of content on Instagram. One front facing in terms of his story, and one that will only be seen, one on his feed, and two that will be seen on his story. which is nuts. So it's definitely the end is soon to come. It's a funny story for what it is, I guess. I'm assuming they'll probably end up settling outside of court and kind of getting that all done. I'm sure Luka won't be one. I don't know if he really would care about it for the most part, but yeah, it's a funny story just to see. But I think the end is gonna come sooner or later. So if you are considering getting involved in the whole influencer hustle, then I probably think this is rather do it sooner rather than later, because I'm sure they're gonna pull the plug on that very, very soon. There's no way brands are gonna be able to afford to be paying kids $60,000 only for them not to decide to turn around and do the thing mid-campaign. And the analytics thing as well is weird, isn't it, right? So that must mean there isn't Instagram, it doesn't allow, Facebook doesn't allow brands to pull data from people who they've kind of sponsored. So I'm guessing it's kind of clunky in monitoring how well your campaign is doing with set person. I guess the only way they have to do it is kind of through affiliate links, right? So kind of like a unique URL that you put in your bio or some shit, which is, again, not the best way to kind of really track how well said person is kind of performing in your campaign. So again, which is another interesting part, again, because I think they were asking him to release the analytics for how many people have been clicking the link for the spectacles, which haven't done that well. I don't think, God bless Luka, he's a cool dude, but I don't think even Luka can get kids to buy Snap spectacles. I just think that shit's dead in the water for the most part. Especially because the app, right? Like, I got little brothers and they're like, what? They're not even that young, right? They're in their mid-20s. And then, for the most part, kids even younger than us are using Snapchat. But it's weird that they market the Snap spectacles to older people, right? Like, I see Snap spectacles being worn more by, like, I don't know, 25 and up, like, tech geeks than I do seeing young kids who actually use Snapchat wearing spectacles. You don't really see that, right? Even think about it, like all those kind of funny videos that you see people post on YouTube, compilations of Snapchat of people making videos where someone's fighting, whether it's a prank or whatever. You never see a kid filming that on a Snap spectacle or something. It's always just someone recording on their phone. So for sure the actual users of the actual app have actually no need for spectacles. So they're trying to push an app that's only been used by a small group of people, but they're trying to push the spectacles to a group of people who don't even use it anymore, which is a very bizarre way of doing business. So again, can't really blame Luka for running off on a plug, and they've glassed themselves a fucking shit. They're garbage. So if you can get away with it, then fair play. So let's see what happens next. You know what? It's an hour now. I think that might be a good place to end for now, and I'm going to pick up the rest of the topics later. But yeah, as promised, that was the Agostinho Zinga Show, episode number 122, 2.5, the level up episode, the episode where I redeemed myself, audio fixed, video fixed, nice and clear. As always, for more information regarding moi, click the link below, agostinhozinga.com for all info regarding DJ sets, or DJ mixes, DJ gigs, blog link on there, store on there with one t-shirt, DJing, check that out. I'm going to add some more over the next few weeks. I'm going to get some stuff printed as well that I want to put together. Just some knickknacks and pieces, I want to have a little kind of online store just full of like weird shit I'm going to make, like, I don't know, custom notebooks, woolly hats and balaclavas, stuff that I kind of wear, maybe some little pins and stuff that I like to put on my jackets and coats, maybe a bandana or two, just little stuff that I find interesting. I'm going to stock those on my store very soon, because again, it's all about action and doing and not writing down fucking stupid goal list. And then I'll be back again probably tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Thursday, right? Yeah, probably tomorrow for another episode of the Agostinho Zinga Show. And then on Friday I am DJing at Tap East, so that should be nice. And then I think I might actually go to XOYO, because Honey is playing back with Motor City Drum Ensemble, which is one of my favorite DJs. I actually saw Motor City Drum Ensemble playing back to back with Young Marco, Jeremy Underground, at XOYO last time around. But since then, XOYO has had a bit of a refurb. They've changed the rooms around. They've changed where the kind of DJ booth is. So it'd be great to see that. And Honey, again, is one of my favorite kind of disco DJs. So that might be cool to watch him. But again, it's in Old Street. It's 20 quid to get in. I don't know if I'm going to be bothered, but I'll see. Maybe if I do get in, then I'll have a report for that as well on the weekend. But apart from that, This been Agostinho Zinga Show episode number 122. Thanks again for tuning in. It's been an absolute pleasure to have your ears and your eyes on the show, and I will see you guys again very, very soon. Peace.